The ceramic filter breaks on day 47. You've been running pond water through that terracotta pot for 6 weeks straight, congratulating yourself. You were smarter than the people who stocked 100 plastic bottles of water that ran out in week 2. And it worked. The ceramic caught the giardia, stopped the bacteria, kept you alive while your neighbors were doubled over with dysentery. But now there's a new problem. The water tastes like metal. Your gums are bleeding. Your kids are complaining of stomach cramps that have nothing to do with parasites. And when you collect the morning dew, it leaves a rainbow sheen on the surface that reminds you of gasoline. Here's what nobody told you about ceramic filtration, sand filters, boiling, about every survival water method that's been around since the Bronze Age. They can't touch dissolved contaminants. They can't stop heavy metals. They can't remove the forever chemicals leaching into the groundwater for 50 years. They can't filter out radiation. Your water is killing you slowly, and the filter that kept you alive for 6 weeks is now just an expensive piece of pottery. This is the real water crisis of the post-apocalyptic world. Not the one that hits you in the first week with vomiting and diarrhea, the one that comes for you in month 3, month 6, year 2, as lead accumulates in your bones and arsenic quietly destroys your nervous system one sip at a time. There's only one civilian technology that can stop it, and almost nobody in the survival community talks about it because they assume it needs electricity, city water pressure, and parts from Amazon. They're wrong. The water from your tap right now, assuming you still have one, contains things that would terrify you if you could see them. Not bacteria, not parasites. Those are almost quaint. I'm talking about PFAS, forever chemicals. They never break down, not in the environment, not in your body. They're in the drinking water of thousands of communities. Your ceramic filter can't touch them. Boiling just concentrates them. Then there are the heavy metals. Lead from old pipes, arsenic from natural geology, mercury from industrial runoff. These are in well water across the country, in sources that will become your primary supply when the municipal plants go dark. And radionuclides, uranium and radium that occur naturally in groundwater. Treatment stops when the power stops, and in the scenario nobody wants to think about, the nuclear one, this is one of the only ways to reduce radioactive contamination to survivable levels. So, how does it work? To improvise, you need to understand the physics. Osmosis is a fundamental process in biology. It's water moving through a membrane from a dilute solution toward a concentrated one, trying to balance things out. The force driving this is called osmotic pressure. The saltier the water, the higher the pressure. Reverse osmosis is exactly what it sounds like. You apply pressure greater than the natural osmotic pressure, and you force the water to move the other direction. You push pure water away from the contamination, leaving the dissolved solids behind. The membrane is a thin film composite with pores so small they're measured in nanometers. Water molecules can squeeze through. Salt ions, heavy metals, large PFAS molecules, they cannot. It's a molecular sieve, and pressure is the force that pushes the water through it. And the numbers matter. For fresh water, you only need about 30 to 60 psi to make it work. That's why home units can run on city water pressure. But for seawater, with its high concentration of salt, you're fighting against almost 400 psi of natural osmotic pressure. You need a serious pump capable of 600 to 1200 psi to even get started. This is why most survival setups focus on fresh water sources. Now, what you'll need. The heart of the system is the membrane. You cannot make one. You cannot improvise one. This is the component you must stockpile. A standard residential membrane can last 2 to 5 years, but it's fragile. Chlorine kills it. Silt clogs it. So before water ever touches that membrane, it needs pre-filtration. First, a sediment filter to remove physical particles, then a carbon filter to remove chlorine and organic compounds. After the membrane, you have 2 outputs. The permeate is your purified water. The concentrate is everything that didn't make it through, now even more concentrated. This is the efficiency problem. A typical system produces 1 gallon of clean water for every 3 gallons you put in.
That means for every gallon you drink, 3 gallons of wastewater carry the contaminants away. In a water-scarce world, that is a brutal trade-off. So, how do you power it without the grid? Option 1, manual power. The Katadyn Survivor 06 is a hand-operated unit that can produce about a quart of water per hour from the ocean. It uses an elegant pressure recovery system to make it physically possible for a person to generate the 800 psi needed. For freshwater sources, where you only need 60 to 100 psi, it's much easier. A simple hand pump or even a bicycle pump can do the job. Option 2, solar power. A typical home RO system with a booster pump only draws 20 to 50 watts. A single 100-watt solar panel and a small battery can run that system indefinitely, producing 50 gallons of pure water on a sunny day. The key is a 12-volt DC pump rated for your target pressure. The technology is proven, deployed in disaster zones and remote villages worldwide. Option 3, vehicle power. Your car's 12-volt electrical system can easily run a small RO pump. You idle the engine, run a hose from your water source through the filters and the pump, and fill your containers. You're trading gasoline for clean water. In some scenarios, that's the best trade you can possibly make. You can build a system from standardized parts for a few $100s, but you need to know about the small things, like the flow restrictor on the wastewater line that maintains pressure across the membrane. Get it wrong, and the system fails. And here's the real catch. The system will only run as long as you can replace the parts that wear out. You have to stockpile the consumables, pre-filter cartridges, carbon cartridges, and spare membranes.
Membrane storage matters. An unused membrane should be kept sealed, cool, and dry, but once it has been wet, it must stay wet. It must be preserved. A membrane that dries out after use is ruined. If you're putting your system into storage for an extended period, you need to flush it with a preservative and seal it properly. This isn't optional. This is the difference between having a working reverse osmosis system when you need it and having an expensive collection of plastic tubes. Cleaning also extends its lifespan. Scale from hard water can be removed with acidic cleaners. Biological fouling responds to chlorinated solutions, but you must flush the chlorine completely before you return to normal operation because chlorine destroys these membranes. The protocols are documented. Follow them religiously. And understand temperature. Cold water passes through the membrane more slowly. If your source water drops to 50 degrees Fahrenheit, expect your production rate to drop by half. In winter, you might need to insulate your system just to maintain a reasonable output. Let's talk about what reverse osmosis actually removes. This is what determines when you need it and when simpler methods will do. Bacteria and protozoa? Yes, with very high efficiency. The pores are small enough to block essentially all of them, but so can your ceramic filter and it doesn't waste water. Don't use RO just for biological threats. Viruses? Yes, though not perfectly. Most viral particles will be stopped, but some might pass through imperfect seals. If viruses are your primary concern, add UV treatment. Dissolved salts? Yes, this is what RO was designed for. Sodium, calcium, magnesium, chloride, all the minerals that make water brackish or salty. We're talking removal rates of 95 to 99%. This is the core capability that other filtration methods cannot match. Heavy metals? Yes, lead, mercury, arsenic, cadmium, all removed at 95 to 99% efficiency. This is why RO matters when you're drawing water from unknown sources that might have been poisoned by decades of industrial runoff. PFAS? Yes, the forever chemicals. An RO membrane alone removes a high percentage. Add a carbon filter after it and you're achieving 94 or better reduction. No other household technology comes close. Nitrates, fluoride, radionuclides like uranium and radium? Yes, yes, and yes. Pharmaceuticals and microplastics? Yes. RO is one of the few proven methods for reduction at over 90% removal for most compounds. So what doesn't it remove? Dissolved gases. Carbon dioxide, radon, hydrogen sulfide, they pass right through with the water. If your water has radon, you need aeration or carbon, not RO. And chlorine. Chlorine must be removed before the membrane. That's why every RO system has a carbon pre-filter. Chlorine destroys the membrane itself. So when do you actually need it? You need RO when the contamination is chemical, not biological, when water comes from industrial areas, downstream from mining operations or agricultural runoff, when the source is unknown and the water tastes metallic, when the scenario involves nuclear hazards. You need it for seawater, though at that point you're talking about serious desalination setups. The practical survival approach looks like this. Primary filtration with ceramic to remove particulates and biologicals, secondary treatment with activated carbon to remove organics and improve taste, and tertiary treatment, reverse osmosis, to remove the dissolved contaminants that nothing else can touch. Each stage protects the next. Together, they handle essentially anything. Now for the cold math. One person needs about 2 gallons of water per day for planning purposes. A 50-gallon per day membrane under real-world conditions will produce maybe 30 to 40 gallons. That's enough for a family of 4. But you're losing water to the waste stream. At a 3-to-1 ratio, producing 40 gallons of drinking water requires 160 gallons of source water. You need to source, transport, and pre-filter 160 gallons every single day. If you're hand pumping a survival desalinator, you're getting maybe 1 liter per hour. 8 hours of pumping gets you 2 gallons. That's survival for one person. It's not sustainable. But solar power changes the equation. A 200-watt solar setup can run a residential RO system all day, producing 50 to 100 gallons with no human effort beyond maintenance. That's the difference between surviving and actually living. And the water you produce is pure. It has no chlorine protection. Bacteria can grow in it. Store it in clean, covered containers and use it within a few days. You need to recognize what failure looks like. Membrane fouling shows up as a decreased production rate. The membrane is getting clogged. Early-stage fouling can be cleaned. Advanced fouling means replacement. Membrane degradation shows up as increased contaminants in your clean water. This happens from chlorine exposure or age. Once the rejection rate drops, the membrane is done. A seal failure means water is just bypassing the membrane. You'll see high production, but also high contamination. Check your O-rings. Pre-filter failure shows up as membrane fouling. If your sediment filter passes silt or your carbon filter passes chlorine, the membrane pays the price. You have to be able to diagnose these problems because when they happen, your lifeline is cut. So let me tell you what to stockpile. Membranes, 3 to 5 per household minimum, stored sealed, cool, and dry. These are the irreplaceable core. Pre-filter cartridges, 20 or more. Sediment filters, carbon filters, these are consumables. Stock deep. O-rings and seals for every connection. A 5-cent O-ring can disable a $500 system. A spare pump if your system is powered. Tubing and fittings. A TDS meter with spare batteries. You cannot taste heavy metals. You cannot see PFAS. You need instrumentation. And you need the cleaning chemicals and the printed and laminated documentation for your specific system because the internet won't be there to help. You need more than concepts. You need a parts list. Let me walk you through a DIY system build. 7 primary components. First, a sediment pre-filter housing, about $12. It holds a $4 cartridge that stops silt and sand. Second, a carbon block pre-filter housing, same thing. This holds an $8 carbon cartridge that removes the chlorine that will kill your membrane. Third, the membrane housing itself, about $35. It's the protective shell. Fourth, the membrane, the thin film composite membrane. Budget $80 for a quality one. This is not the component to cheap out on. Fifth, the flow restrictor, a small $5 part that creates the necessary back pressure. It's sized to your membrane. Get the wrong one and your system won't work. Sixth, tubing and fittings, about $30 for a starter set. Seventh, a pressure gauge, $10. It's your window into the system's performance, telling you if you have enough pressure, ideally 60 to 65 psi, for the membrane to do its job.
Here's something most people skip. Practice. Not watching videos, not reading about it. Actually building, operating, and tearing down your water filtration system. Build it on your workbench. Run water through it. Measure the output. Then take it apart. Every fitting, every tube. Put it back together. Do it until you can assemble the entire system in dim light with cold hands while someone is asking you questions. Because that's what a crisis feels like. The first time you build this system should not be when your kids are thirsty and the neighbors are getting sick. The first time should be a Saturday afternoon with no pressure. The 10th time can be the crisis. By then, your hands know what to do even when your brain is panicking. The core of a grid-down system is a 12-volt DC booster pump wired to a battery you charge with solar panels. This gives you indefinite operation. The assembly is logical. Source water hits a sediment filter, then a carbon filter, then the pump pushes it under pressure into the reverse osmosis membrane. From there, it splits. Clean water, the permeate, goes to your container. Wastewater, the concentrate, goes to the drain. Test it. Your tap water might be 300 total dissolved solids, or TDS. Your clean water should be under 30. If it's 150, something is wrong. Check your connections, check the membrane. Then measure your waste ratio. For every 1 gallon of clean water, you should be producing 3 to 4 gallons of waste. If you're making 8 gallons of waste, your pressure is wrong or your flow restrictor is oversized. Now let's talk about what goes wrong, because everything goes wrong eventually. The most common failure is simple neglect. You installed the system, it worked, and you forgot about it. 6 months later, your sediment filter is a brown cylinder of mud and your flow is crashed. The second failure is silent and deadly. Your carbon filter gets exhausted. The water still looks and tastes fine, but chlorine is now slipping through, attacking your $80 RO membrane, destroying it molecule by molecule. You won't know until your TDS readings start climbing, and by then it's too late. The most catastrophic failure, freeze damage. Water expands when it freezes. A frozen membrane is a destroyed membrane. A frozen filter housing can crack. There is no repair for ice damage. If the power fails in a cold climate, you drain the system or it's gone. Understand the water you'll be dealing with. In a city, after the taps run dry, you're looking at park ponds and urban streams. The real danger isn't just bacteria, it's the accumulated hydrocarbons and heavy metals from decades of runoff. In rural areas, that clean-looking stream is likely full of agricultural runoff, nitrates, pesticides, animal waste. This is the chemical contamination that kills you slowly, and it's why reverse osmosis becomes essential. But RO is not magic, it's a tool with limits. And here's the uncomfortable truth about testing. A cheap TDS meter tells you how much stuff is dissolved in your water, but it doesn't tell you what that stuff is. Low TDS could be clean water, or it could be water with low minerals but significant lead contamination. You're making an educated guess. Your best defense is always to start with the cleanest water source you can possibly find. And finally, accept the brutal trade-off nobody wants to talk about. For every gallon of clean water, 3 to 4 gallons go down the drain. This is the thermodynamic cost of forcing water through a membrane against its natural will. In a drought, when you're hauling every bucket from half a mile away, that hurts. You have to collect that wastewater, use it for toilets, for cleaning, for gardens. Nothing gets wasted. That is the price of safety. 3 gallons of waste for 1 gallon of life. In a world where the treatment plants are dark, this is the knowledge that separates clean water from dissolved poison. The infrastructure that was hiding the problem is failing. When it stops, you'll need this. Start building now.